Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the Maintenance of Racial Harmony Bill. Mr. Speaker, the bill contains several important provisions, most notably to allow the Minister to make racial content restraining orders, including foreign influence restraining orders, and to establish a Presidential Council for Racial and Religious Harmony. The bill also allows the Minister to establish community remedial initiatives to address racial incidents and as an alternative to criminal proceedings. Mr. Speaker, the overall intent of this provision is, as the name of the bill suggests, to maintain racial harmony in Singapore, and I commend this intention. Mr. Speaker, Singapore is renowned internationally as a safe and prosperous society, and one in which people of many different cultures, religion and ethnicity live and work together successfully, peacefully and respectfully. Such a situation is, however, not something to be taken for granted. As noted by then Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong in 2017, and I quote, "There is nothing natural about where we are, multiracial, multi-religious, tolerant and progressive. We made it happen, and we have got to protect it, nurture it, preserve it, and never break it." Senior Minister Lee's comments were true then and remain true today. As highlighted by the Minister earlier, the study conducted by the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Digital Development and Information indicates that 43% of surveyed Singaporeans feel that racism remains a problem in Singapore, and 35% have had racially insensitive encounters. Mr. Speaker, these figures demonstrate the importance of proactive action, such as the provisions contained in this bill, to build and maintain a Singapore where racial harmony is not just a theory or something enjoyed by certain racial groups, but a day-to-day reality for every person who calls Singapore home. Mr. Speaker, I will now comment on several specific aspects of the bill. First, racial content restraining orders. Mr. Speaker, Part 8, Subsection 2 of the bill allows the Minister to make a racial content restraining order that prohibits or requires those subject to the order to do or not to do certain things, including prohibiting a person from writing about, talking about, or distributing information about any specific subject, topic, or theme, requiring a person to take steps to ensure that any specified information or material is no longer available, and prohibiting a person from printing, editing, or contributing to any publication. Mr. Speaker, these powers are substantial, and I am concerned that they allow, at least in theory, the conditions of a restraining order to go beyond what is reasonably necessary to address behavior of concern. Perhaps the bill could contain a provision that stipulates that restraining orders can only be made once all other options have been exhausted, and that the conditions of the restraining order are directly proportional to the behavior of concern, the least intrusive or restrictive remedy available to achieve the desired outcome, and clearly aimed at modifying behavior of concern and not used to punish people. Mr. Speaker, my second issue relates to community education. In an ideal world, this bill would be unnecessary and Singaporeans would not engage, certainly not deliberately, in any act that causes feelings of enmity, hatred, ill will, or hostility between different races, or incites, instigates, or encourages a person to do the same. Mr. Speaker, the MHA data I referenced earlier, particularly the figure that 35% of surveyed Singaporeans have had racially insensitive encounters, suggests that more work needs to be done before my ideal world is realized. Mr. Speaker, in Malay, please. Tuan Speaker, sebagaimana yang sering dikatakan, pencegahan lebih baik daripada rawatannya. Dan saya ingin mendengar tentang sebarang program yang sesuai dari segi budaya dan umur yang kini tersedia di sekolah-sekolah rendah dan menengah kita, iaitu program yang mengajar kanak-kanak dan remaja untuk memerangi sikap tidak toleran atau persangka terhadap kaum atau agama, sambil membolehkan pembincangan terbuka tentang pandangan dan pendapat yang berbeza. Saya ingin mendengar khususnya tentang program sedemikian yang telah direka secara bersama dengan kanak-kanak dan remaja dari pelbagai kumpulan budaya, kaum dan agama. Berkaitan dengan itu, adalah penting dalam sesebuah masyarakat apabila anggotanya boleh dengan selamat mengemukakan atau bertanya tentang topik atau soalan yang sah dan tulen mengenai kaum dan agama dengan syarat ia dilakukan dengan cara yang sensitif dan membina. Yang penting, apabila kita memendung dengan sewajarnya tindakan atau perbincangan yang menyinggung perasaan atau tidak sensitif dari segi kaum, kita tidak tanpa sengaja menyekat perbualan atau dialog yang bersifat ingin tahu. Ini amat penting terutamanya bagi kanak-kanak dan remaja yang lazimnya ingin tahu tentang perbezaan dan mereka perlu diberi ruang selamat untuk bertanya tentang kaum dan agama serta belajar tentang kepelbagaian, tolerasi dan sifat inklusif. Mr. Speaker, related to the above is the issue of new citizens, permanent residents and other foreigners living in Singapore. Mr. Speaker, people arrive in Singapore either temporarily or permanently from many different countries and bring with them diverse opinions and behaviors. I would like to know what programs, including community education initiatives, are available to welcome new arrivals and alert them to the cultural norms expected or required in Singapore and the thinking behind these norms. It is important that we assist all Singaporeans, including those new to our country, to not engage in any behavior that may inadvertently offend or distress others. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to the proposed Presidential Council for Racial and Religious Harmony. I understand that the Council is an extension of the current Presidential Council for Religious Harmony and that it is to have a range of functions related to racial and religious harmony. I support the establishment of such a council and would like to know what mechanisms are in place to ensure that membership of the council is representative of the diverse Singapore community and that individual members have the necessary expertise and experience to undertake their role. I would also like to know how the council intends to seek the views and opinions of the Singaporean community when making decisions, including the views and opinions of children and young people, women, foreign workers and other at-risk groups. Mr. Speaker, the bill also allows the Minister to establish community remedial initiatives or CRIs for people who have engaged in conduct prejudicial to racial harmony. As noted in the Ministry of Home Affairs press release dated 7 January 2025, and I quote, CRIs will provide an alleged offender the opportunity to learn from and make amends for their racist conduct, thereby soothing communal tension and repairing ties between the communities. And satisfactorily completion of a community remedial program can be taken into account by the public prosecutor in deciding whether to prosecute a race-related offence under the bill. Mr. Speaker, I support the establishment of CRIs and would like to know what mechanisms are in place to ensure that the initiatives will be co-developed with relevant committee members and leaders, evidence-based and independently evaluated, and sufficiently funded and staffed by people with the necessary expertise and experience. I would also like to know whether it is intended that any of the CRIs will formally incorporate the principles and practices of restorative justice, a model of community healing that is particularly relevant to racial harmony. Mr. Speaker, the bill allows the Minister to designate entities and action that then enforces certain obligations on the entities, including reporting foreign donations and anonymous donations, reporting foreign affiliations, and reporting governing body composition. The bill allows the Minister to make a foreign influence restraining order, if necessary, or expedite to preempt, prevent, or reduce any foreign influence that may undermine racial harmony in Singapore and present a threat to public peace and public order in Singapore. Mr. Speaker, a foreign influence restraining order, while important, may have a significant impact on an entity, including on the entity's cash flow, strategic partnership, and management structure. Perhaps the bill could contain a provision that stipulates that foreign influence restraining orders, just like restraining orders in general, can only be made once all other options have been exhausted, and that the conditions of the restraining order are directly proportional to the issue of concern, the least intrusive or restrictive remedy available to achieve the desired outcome, and clearly aimed at modifying behavior of concern. Entities may not always be aware of their obligations regarding foreign influence or may be engaging in behavior without intent, and these entities should be alerted and supported as early in the process as possible. Mr. Speaker, my next issue of concern relates to online threats and overseas challenges. Mr. Speaker, a substantial proportion of racially offensive or inappropriate material is disseminated online, including from overseas and anonymous sources. This material is notoriously difficult to respond to, and I would like to know what mechanisms are in place to enable the ministry or other agencies to prevent, monitor or take down racially problematic material that is online, either domestically or internationally, particularly when the material is posted anonymously or under a pseudonym. I would also like to know what mechanisms are in place to enhance domestic cooperation with international agencies, including law enforcement agencies, in responding to online or overseas issues. Mr. Speaker, racism in any form is harmful and shapes people's everyday life, their work, schooling, sense of belonging, and mental and physical well-being. The harm can be worse for those who experience discrimination on several fronts, such as race, gender, age, religion, and disability. The impact of these behaviors can be substantial, and it is important that victims are provided with the appropriate level of professional, trauma-informed support and care. Victims should also be informed of their right to seek legal advice about potential legal action against liable individuals or entities. Supporting victims of racism is a responsibility we all share. This means standing up against negative stereotypes, intervening in instances in interpersonal racism, and advocating for fair practices in our institution. We must create safe space where victims feel heard, validated, and supported. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I will make some final comments about the role of the community. Mr. Speaker, racism exists in several forms and can be covert or overt, conscious or unconscious, deliberate or accidental. Racism can be individual or personal, or it can be systemic or structural. Regardless of the form it takes, we all have a role to play to be vigilant in our own behavior and the behavior of others, and to speak up if something is not right. We cannot and should not only rely on others to do something or on laws or guidelines. This is about taking personal responsibility and working collectively to stamp out racism wherever and whenever it occurs. By doing so, we can assist make Singapore a place where everyone, regardless of their race, feels safe, welcome, and respected.